Welcome to Every Friday with Dan and Olivia. I'm Dan Miles.
And I'm Olivia Delbo.
So last week, we discussed our listener submissions for good words and bad words. Larry Ganny was bold enough to send us an audio clip, which we closed the show with and commented on. Well, this week, we have yet another clip from yet another listener. So before we get to today's topic, we're going to go ahead and give that a listen. Let's roll it.
Hey, Dan and Olivia. I hope everything with you guys is just tickety-boo. Caught your last show featuring an audio clip, so I thought I'd jump on the bandwagon. While I don't necessarily consider myself a grammar Nazi, I would try to stick to the proper forms of the language. However, I would not go out of my way to correct someone because I would just find that to be very rude. Which brings me to the use of a word that in the most common North American vernacular is mispronounced almost 100% of the time. But because of two jobs I had at the same time, I was forced to pronounce it the correct way in one and the wrong way in the other. Now, the definition of the word is a military or political group that rules a country after taking power by force. I'll get to the word in a moment. First, the context in which I had to use them. As a local broadcaster, I did a radio show here in Montreal for about 20 years. In the middle of those 20 years, I also spent a decade where I was a host and producer on Radio Canada International, which was Canada's voice around the world via shortwave. Now, RCI at the time had a stellar reputation, equal in stature to outlets like the BBC World News, Deutsche Welle, and Voice of America. We did hard news in a serious tone, quite often sounding like BBC during the Blitz. Anyway, back to the word. It's spelled Junta. Here in North America, we refer to the word as junta. That's wrong. The origin of the word is Portuguese, so the J is pronounced as a J. But if you say that here in North America, you will spend most of your time being corrected by people and then you having to explain the origin of the word, proving that you're correct, and then moving on. And who has time for all of that? Conversely, when I went to work at RCI, saying that word wrong was practically punishable by death. So, when a military junta took place in some far-flung corner of the world, I had to be extremely conscious of what microphone I was sitting in front of when broadcasting the news. And there were times when I worked at both places on the same day, so I had to remember to switch gears on the fly. And since we're talking about words, and I have your undying attention, I have to ask a question of you, Olivia. I know your background is European and your wonderful accent often gives you away, but you were raised in the U.S., so I'm curious to know if you use any British spellings of words when you write, or do you use all American ones? As you may know, here in Canada, we tend to use the British spellings, such as color and flavor with an OU, for instance. In most cases, that doesn't faze me one way or the other. Living here in North America, right up against the American border, we're very familiar with the American way of spelling things. So it doesn't bother me, although I must confess that I can never get used to the American spelling of theater. When I see the ER instead of the RE at the end, it just looks wrong to me. But that's just me. So, I have said my piece on juntas, and I'm eager to have a spelling lesson from Miss Dabo. Dan and Olivia, discuss.
Okay.
So Peter wants to know, when you spell color or favorite, do you use the English spelling with the U or the American spelling?
You know, it's a really good question. And Peter, I appreciate the complimentary assumption that I would do either or. I'm a very bad speller, as it is. And because I went to the Lycée Français in London from about 4 to about 9 prior to moving to Taos, New Mexico, that created a situation for me where I spelled everything phonetically. So though I would love to answer that question and say, oh, well, I say certain words and spell certain words with the English letters, and it's really whatever just comes out that's even remotely close to being spelled correctly, just so that a general human being can understand it.
Well, general human beings is pretty much what our audience is comprised of.
And by that I mean no disrespect to anyone. I just mean just so that it's you can look at it and kind of somewhat read it.
Well, I understand what he means, because if you're raised in a country where they spell color COLOUR, and then at a young age you move to a country where they spell it COLOR, do you just stick with what you learn? Do you adapt? And I have a lot of Canadian friends and English friends who do the different spellings and stuff, and he just wanted to know, because he's a fan of our show, about you particularly. So
It's such a lovely question, and I think if I really think about it in the word color, actually I do spell COLOUR. So is that English?
I think it is, and I think it's kind of a little fancier. I don't really mind. I think I've occasionally spelled, as a pure-blooded American, I spelled favorite in color with those spellings. But his thing about theater, I'm the opposite. R-E looks wrong to me. To me, it's T-H-E-A-T-E-R looks correct, and R-E looks wrong. So, again, it's just what you're used to.
And fear, I spell F-E-A-R. So is that English or American?
You spell fear, F-E-A-R? I think everybody spells fear, F-E-A-R.
I'm sorry, I thought that was the word, the other
No, I said
word.
theater.
Theater, T-H-E-A-R-T-R-E.
Okay, so you have the R-E at the end. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So is that English or American?
That's the English.
Oh, okay. So maybe what happened, and I'm learning something here today, thanks to our thanks to this question, is that I guess with those spelling phonetically, because of the French-speaking school that I went to, I was also like a sponge, as one does as a kid, taking in the English spelling, and then but by the time I moved to Mexico, I think it became a mixture of the two. But I think probably the more fancy words I've kept English.
And as Peter mentioned, he lives near the border of the U.S., and so the American culture is just all over Toronto and Montreal and places like that. And, so as Homer says, really, Canada's just America Junior, right? So
I love Canada. It's one of my favorite countries. I think it's the best place to land before you come back into the States, because it kind of allows you to adapt.
And as Peter subtly reminded us, he was the tickety-boo guy. He was the guy whose good word was tickety-boo. And his bad word was fine, like when a woman says, "I'm fine."
Right, exactly. I can completely relate. Well, thank you so much, Peter. Thank you. It's a real honor to have you as a fan. Thank you for the lovely question. You have a lovely voice. I can understand why you're a radio broadcaster. And I want to check out your show. Dan says it's great.
Yeah, it is great. And as we mentioned before, I don't like it when professional broadcasters are so generic you can't tell one from the other. You can tell Peter. That's what I like about him. He speaks like a pro, but you always know it's him. So I like that. So thank you, my friend, for that contribution. So moving forward, we are recording today via Skype. Olivia is at her home in Los Angeles. I am at Big Bug Sound recording studio in Phoenix, Arizona, which is owned and operated by a gentleman who has kindly engineered our most recent episode. He also engineered that one we did about smiling. Our plan all along was to have him join us as a guest on the show at some point, and that time is now. So come on in and join the party. Robert Lang.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
That's
We're
been
so
done.
excited to have you.
Thanks.
You did such an amazing job with our show, but what we're really excited about in particular today is to learn all about you and to have our audience get to know you, because you such an interesting, you're so gifted and so talented in many areas that regarding music and recording.
All I really want to know is how he spells color.
COLOR, like a damn American.
Oh, it's with a K. Right?
Yeah.
K-U-L-U-H-R.
No, I enjoy the superfluous U's that the British put in here and there. I wonder why the U dropped out.
Silent U.
Because,
There's so many silent letters. The English language makes no sense. Robert's name has come up on the show before, primarily in the capacity of jingle composer. Robert wrote and performed the Tom at 20 and Good Word, Bad Word jingles. He also contributed to our listener shows, so we know that Sling Blade is his perfect film, and his first music purchase was Hotel California. We milked that one. So
That is correct.
Our goal today is to learn at least one more thing about Robert. That's our mission. If we can learn one more thing about him. Sling Blade, Hotel California, maybe one more thing.
All right, let's do one more thing, and then I'm going to go have lunch.
Right. And, I think I'm going to kind of let Olivia steer the ship to satisfy her curiosity. And, maybe I'll just be Dan at 20. Check back with me 20 minutes later.
Do I have to do no jingle for you?
Well, let's do it right now. 2, 3, 4. Dan
at 20.
Except we're not at 20. What are we at? There's a little clock. Oh, we kind of are because of our, prep work here. But, so I'll jump in because I know Robert better than you do. So why don't you two guys have at it?
Well, the thing that's really intriguing to me about having gotten to know you over the last few months, Robert, is your encyclopedic knowledge of music. I mean, you are one of the most thorough, detailed, artists, and I know you're also a musician, and I'm just interested to know the genesis of how you kind of got into this field and what spoke to you initially. I'm sure when you were a wee young lad, that made you realize that I really want to get into this field and I really want to play this musician and I really would love to record. What interested you about both being a musician and also hearing music with such an acute ear where you felt that you could, record it in the way that you do so beautifully with so many amazing, it's so beautifully colored, like it's a sort of a blank canvas, I'm sure, that you see, and then you know exactly what colors to blend and put on that canvas to eventually make it the piece of art that it is.
So how I developed in those ways as a arranger and producer and hearing that is just come from, I would say, the very basic start was that I just always loved music. It's the one real big passion I have in my life. So even from a very, very young age, I loved music. And I remember even like singing myself to sleep at night as a little kid. And I guess
Wow.
I remember like one of my mother's friends commenting about that. And I thought, oh, doesn't everyone do that? It's like when you're a kid, you are who you are. You don't think about social conventions or whatever. And my parents got me into, when I was in 4th grade, they said, we want you to play an instrument. And so I I took clarinet because the guy who babysat me, Rich Crawford, was the guy I looked up to. He was the first clarinet in the band. And I said, oh, I'll be like Rich Crawford and I'll play clarinet. And then as a teenager, realized I was never going to get any girls playing the clarinet, so I switched to guitar. And but it was really, I think it was partly that, but largely I was starting to get interested in different music. Dan mentioned the Eagles. Hotel California was a big, as my first sort of rock and roll music purchase. So I started to listen to different things. My parents' influence was very limited. My mother, I remember, used to listen to what used to be called beautiful music. I don't know if they had that. It's what we now call elevator music.
Interesting.
So it was like,
Mantovani,
it was
Percy
like,
Faith.
7 horrible, awful, schlocky versions of The Girl from Ipanema. Things like that.
Yeah.
But not the Stan Getz. They would never play this. It would be like do 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 trombone. It just like the stuff that makes me cringe now. And not to digress, but I remember the first time I heard the original version of The Girl from Ipanema, I couldn't deal with it because there was a part of my brain that said, this is the worst song of all time. And I'm hearing the original version going, this is an amazing song. And I go, how can these two exist? And it was, oh my God, it's not the song, it's the production. And I think a light bulb went off. So, and this actually gets into your secondary or maybe your primary question, which is, how do I hear things in different ways? And a lot of it is that realization that it's not really the song, it's the production. I've done a workshop a couple times on song production for songwriters and saying, look, let's listen to some professional tunes. Maybe not even great songs like we did I Want It That Way by the Backstreet Boys, which is a terrible, terrible song, but was number 1 in 25 countries because it is so freaking catchy. Why? Production.
Yep.
Great production. And we looked at Torn by Natalie Imbruglia, which is a good, it's a good song and an amazing production. And that song has been done by a lot of different people. And then it finally was a huge hit because the production of Natalie Imbriglia's version of that really made it come alive. So my ears have grown over the years, getting into, out of sort of the traditional rock into things maybe a little more sophisticated, like Steely Dan in college. I had a roommate in my mid-20s, Eddie, who really had wide range. He would listen to classical, and he was into Pat Metheny and all over the board, and he would make me these bizarre, in a good way, mixtapes of, back in the days when we listened to cassettes, of all these different things. I remember him giving me a copy of Steely Dan Asia and The Royal Scam, right? And I remember driving home from this little Chinese restaurant we used to hang out at, and I was like, oh, I have to drive into Boston. Like, I have to, it was such an sophisticated urban, I had to get out of this suburban milieu that I was in, and like, it just felt, and these little steps of, oh, there's something, there's a whole other world out there, and then discovering Cole Porter in my late 20s. My mom got me a 4 CD box set of everyone from Ella Fitzgerald and Sinatra to Billie Holiday doing all. I'm like, one guy wrote all of these songs. And then a little after that, I discovered Jobim, right? I mentioned I had that experience of hearing the first version of Girl from Ipanema and going, oh, this actually is a great song, and obsessively listening to a CD my roommate Sarah had of different people doing Jobim, and it was just wow. And then I worked at a recording studio in the mid-90s, and my boss was the most talented musician I have ever known. He was on the Ed Sullivan Show when he was 6 years old. He played piano and clarinet and saxophone and on and on and on. And he was, perfect pitch, and he's a composer and a singer, and he played a lot of society weddings on Nantucket. And so, as you imagine the kind of folks that go to Nantucket for society weddings, I was there to kind of be the roadie and pick up the rest of the band when they came in on the ferries, and I got to hear this music from stellar musicians. And then watching him work as a producer and an engineer and arranger in the studio, all of this, and then just being in my own studio here and listening to my own recordings and going, how do I make a Steely Dan record? How do I make a Sade record? How do I make, not that I want to make a Backstreet Boys record, but something that could be a huge hit. And what is it that makes production? And I really analyze songs, and I'm very, I get into it. So I know it's a very, very long-winded answer to your question, but all of those things are what has got me to this point where I hear things and I'm able to pull in a Sting influence or a Jobim influence or a Nick Drake influence or a Beethoven influence, maybe I hear a string quartet on this song. So, yeah.
It's those are all great answers, and they're very visually descriptive, and so interesting. I mean, all of these influences and these things that you've listened to and that have been given to you, that have obviously permeated into your style and the way you look at things. How do you feel? I'm interested to know about, because you're saying all of these things, and there's all these eclectic influences and styles that speak to you, but your sound also always sounds like it has an embedded pop sensibility in it as well. So I don't know if you're aware of that when you're creating this music, but maybe it's just something that's innate within the fiber of the way you see things.
Yeah, I think making the song work in the pop sense, in the best version of that word, which is just making something that's marketable. I don't like to dumb things down and say, oh, let's do the chorus 50 times, because it's the hook. But let's, I call trimming the fat. That's a big focus of mine. It's like, okay, we don't need a 12-bar intro of you strumming guitar chords. No one wants to hear that. Don't give me more than 4. And if you do, give me a melody line on top of that. So that, what works and how do you keep people interested, that I think is my pop sensibility. And again, that comes from listening to pop records. My bottom line as a producer is keep it interesting. Don't ever have people go, wait, they're just drifting off and not focused on the song. And so I really, as I've become more comfortable directing my clients in the studio, not just engineering me techie, I say, let me tell you what's not working. Here's how it could be better. And they always get the last say in it, but if they let me really produce them, which I love doing, then I'm really going to do a lot of the trimming the fat and keeping it interesting all the time.
Yeah, and I would think that you personalize that. Is it interesting to you? You're the litmus test. Some producers I know tend to be almost a little bit too overly aware of the public, and they're listening with the public's ears rather than their own personal ears. And I think that also rubs off on the artist that you're working with. You have to be sensitive to who you're working, and it's got to speak to you, and it's got to speak to the artist that you're working with. And you strike me as a person, whenever we've discussed music, or you and I have talked about doing music, and I've sent you stuff or vice versa, your feedback is so thorough that it immediately takes you to this place where the artist is disarmed because they know that you're listening with their ears and vice versa. There's an embedded teamwork there that seems to come across.
Well, thank you. I definitely strive to get what the artist is shooting for. And at the same time, I do not care what trends are out there, what I think anyone but me and the artist want. It's about how can we make the song the best it can be. I am not a fan of what's out there today. I don't think there's a lot of good music. I do listen to things just to see what engineering, arrangement, production trends are happening, just so I'm aware of them. I feel like it's my duty as an engineer, and if someone comes to me and says, hey, do you know this song, this new Lord tune or new Lady Gaga song, I may not go and buy the album, but I'm going to go check it out and go, oh, listen to how sparse that arrangement is. Like, this is the new thing in pop music, is very, very open, which is a contrast to what's been going on, where everything is smushed and overcompressed. And I like that. It's like, oh, there's space for the music to breathe. So yes, I think, how can I make the song the best and bring the artist's vision to life? And again, don't care about record sales. I'm not working with people signed to Sony. If I was, I would probably have a different mentality, but I don't think I would ever want that gig.
No, and they have very specific people that they go to who sort of work for them, where it's really not about the artist. I mean, there's some people who do both, and that's a rare commodity as well. But yeah, I mean, it's two completely different kettle of fish altogether. But I hear that in your work, that there's an irreverence that's very personal, and it's distinctively musical. And your musical influences have all rubbed off on your work, because I always hear distinct sophistication, which is lovely, and always, it always rubs me the right way when I hear in a producer and an engineer. What is your favorite instrument that you play and that you like to kind of always put in the majority of the stuff that you record, just because you think that it's the soul or the belly of the music of the song?
Well, I'm a guitarist, so I always gravitate towards guitar. I do play a little bit of keyboard. I studied piano, but I never felt like I mastered the instrument. And I don't throw guitar into songs because I like guitar. It's, does this work? Maybe it's a rhythm, acoustic, strummed part that is in most singer-songwriter stuff. If they're guitar players, how can you not have that? And it might be a very muted single note electric part, and it might be something very moody on electric with a lot of delay, and it's bouncing left and right in the stereo field, and like whatever. It's like, what enhances the song? I would never throw a cool moody electric guitar into a song unless it added to it, because even though I love that sound, I don't want to go, oh, hey, I want to be on this song, I want to play on your, like, no. If there's a better guitar player out there for my client, I'll bring that person in. Sometimes I play guitar for my clients because I'm a competent sort of rhythm player, and some lead-ish, I'll put that in quotes, stuff, if it's simple enough, I can do that. And sometimes it's just a budget thing. I'm already here, let me grab my guitar at $48 an hour instead of, bringing someone in for $150.
Sure.
Right.
you referenced some regions earlier because I know that you're an East Coaster guy originally. You mentioned Boston. Did I hear Nantucket?
Yeah, so Nantucket, for your listeners who may not know, is a little island south of Cape Cod, and it's home to lots of rich white people. It's really like it's a so my boss in the studio would do these society weddings, and people with old Boston money and occasional celebrities would show up. We never had an Olivia Dabo show up, but minor
Right.
celebrities, no biggies like you.
Well, because we've had Ken Reed on the show, and he doesn't sound like he's from Boston either, and he's a professional stand-up comedian, and so I wonder
Yes.
when people come from Boston or from Massachusetts and they don't have the accent, I wonder if it's something that you, because Ken Reed goes, yeah, I didn't want to sound like a heroin dealer. That's what he said.
Right.
And Drew Zing, Drew Zing, who was on my other show, he was born and raised in Manhattan, and he does not have. I mean, I lived in New York, and I knew a lot of New York accents in Manhattan, and he didn't sound like Bugs Bunny. He just sounded like a guy who grew up in Nebraska, and it's just sort of intriguing. So, did you ever have the? We've interacted a little bit about
Oh, my God.
the Boston.
I have the worst. The actual truth is I have a horrible Boston accent. And I've worked.
Really?
I do. And I've covered up for 30 years now. So I'll tell you how that came about was I worked. I just talked the way sort of my parents, who were very blue collar, talked. And I'll go into my Boston accent. So if I'm talking like this, it's more like this. This is kind of the typical Boston accent, which is how I talk. Number. Hey, yeah, so, I drove my car down to the park and we went down to the park to play some baseball with Mark Hartley. You know Mark, right? His sister Barbara. Yeah, she was there. And we went to the parks department really needs to work in that park because it's like, oh my God, it's wicked bad. Like that's how I grew up. And I started to realize that's not a desirable accent. And so I'm sure are aware like Michael Caine. Michael Caine says that
Caine, yes.
Right, when people, I don't do a very good Michael Caine, but my girlfriend likes it, so I need to work on it. So he said that people in England sort of look down on him because he has the Cockney accent, which is associated with lower class. But outside of the country, people just looked at him as a great actor.
Yes.
And he had a unique voice, and so he learned to sort of grow into his voice and accept that's how he talked. Right? But for me, and I have this conflict, is like, okay, am I being inauthentic? Because I'm covering something up, but it's a part of myself. So if you want to get real metaphysical, am I not being true to myself? And
Does it ever slip out like when you lose
Oh,
your
yeah.
temper?
Yeah.
Because I spent a lot of
Yeah.
time around you, and I've never heard you sound like anything other than
Yeah.
what we're hearing now. So, and of course, Olivia has that thing too, where she'll do a role with an American accent
Right,
or a
right.
different type of American accent
Yeah.
because she's so talented.
Yeah.
But but this is
You should do that voice more. Like a Fran Drescher.
I don't know about that.
for hairdresser. Everybody else forgets that she was in Spinal Tap. She had
That's
a
right.
small role, but
That's right.
it's when you mentioned singing yourself to sleep. The only person I've heard who also sang himself to sleep was John Lennon. His aunt said he used to sing himself to sleep every night. And I actually have a T-shirt that says "Be like Rich Crawford." He was also my hero growing up. Did you say he's your clarinet guy, right?
Yeah.
No, but earlier you said
Internet meme.
new internet meme. Be like Rich Crawford. Move over, Michael Jordan. We're not going to be like Mike. No, but Robert said earlier, not to digress. That's something we never say on the show anymore because all we do is digress.
Yeah.
I never use that word.
Because Olivia always apologizes for transgressing or for digressing, and I'm transgressing.
She never apologized for
Cross-dressing.
transgressing.
Yeah,
Cross-dressing, exactly.
Digress.
But my point is a lot of the best stuff on the show is when we all transgress and digress.
Okay, that's our new word. That's like our favorite good word and bad word.
Well, actually, before we got
I'm a
going,
transgressor.
Robert and I came up with a good word, emphatically.
Yes.
We were talking about how close I should be to the microphone, and he said, well, when you start to get into it, you speak more emphatically, and we can actually see my levels going up on the board. And so that could be our good word, and our bad word can be digress or transgress.
Transgress I like better.
But
It's
also,
so 2017.
but what Robert said about, hearing like a Muzak version of Girl from Ipanema, I'll be in the grocery store, I'll hear like, Woman off Double Fantasy, and I can just picture in my mind these musicians who've never heard the original, just very, very, fumbling through the chart,
Yes.
playing the melody a little bit wrong, having no feel, and thinking, my God, if somebody heard this, they'd think this was a terrible piece of crap. And then when they learn what the originals, they go, oh my, it's exactly like Robert said. As he said that, I thought of so many times I'm in the store, I go, oh my goodness, this is just... In fact, I was in the store last night and that Genesis song was playing, I Can't Dance, where he goes, I can't dance.
Yeah.
And the,
Yes.
the volume was at such a level that all I really heard was, I, and he must do it like 40 times. I almost wanted to leave the store rather than suffer through that. So,
I think it was a real gift, though, that happened when you were a kid. It almost strikes me as like something out of a Coen Brothers movie where there's this, this kid and he's in a department store and, he's in an elevator or wherever you were when you would listen to music. But you can always tell a good song from a bad song when you hear it in a Muzak style, because the good ones are just set apart more and you kind of go, you know what, this is actually kind of cool. Obviously, all music is corny, but it does give you the opportunity to listen to music in a different way. And because you have this gift as an arranger and what you've now grown into and evolved into with how you display things in productions that you do, I'm sure it was just a keen little gift that came along your way to kind of almost like it was the kernel in the sand that kind of helped get you kind of going,
Well, I think it's just the intrinsic passion I have for music that when I hear music, even if I hate it, I'm still listening to it. I'm still going,
Yes.
oh, well, I hate the song, but less snare drum sounds great. Like,
Yeah.
something like that. Like I said, I might go check out the new Lady Gaga song, even if I don't buy the album. And I think she's talented. I'm not trashing Lady
Yes.
Gaga. But yeah, I think it's just that because it's so intrinsic to my soul that I love it, that when an opportunity comes along, I'm just pulled towards it, right? It's like that Zen, just be who you are and let things. And I went to electrical engineering school for 5 years, and it was the worst 5 years of my life because I was not pursuing my passion at all. Electrical engineering couldn't be more different than music. I mean, someone could argue that, but it's like, there's creativity in it in a sense, but linear systems analysis and calculus 4 and 5 and physics and what I remember from engineering school is how AM and FM radio work. That's the only technical stuff I remember, and I will not go into it here, but because why? It was related to music.
Interesting. That's fascinating, but I would think not unlike, I was having this discussion with my son the other day that pertained to logic. And it's fascinating to me, as is physics, logic and physics, and how you can ultimately apply it into your life. It's a sort of math where I was always terrible at math. I was pretty much good at everything else, but I would always hit a wall whenever there would be a math problem. My brain would just shut down, and it would hurt. It would be literally like I couldn't get and I was never able to apply it to how it would be ultimately integrated into my life for a reason, But based on the engineering aspect, I'm interested to see now at this stage how you feel that was the 5 words. You don't look back on it fondly, but do you feel like it was useful to have, I've had about 6 different acting teachers, and, there are some that stood out to me as being more important. As time goes on, they were all very fruitful for my toolbox, so to speak, because I now know how to be a master technician in that field when I come up against situations where I'm working with a director that, is either great, but he's asking me to come from a completely different place, which it would probably normally go out of my comfort zone. But because I have that toolbox readily available, I can kind of go and be more technical about it. Right? Do you know what I'm saying? There's an understanding and you can fall back on it. So I'm interested to know how you feel that particular part of your life is now, how you use that now in your work.
I honestly don't. And people commonly make that mistake. They go, oh, well, you must use your engineering degree in this job. It's like, no, I'm a user of the equipment that if I had applied my degree, I could be designing and building, like microphones and microphone preamps and programming the recording software. But at the end of the day, I'm just a user. Just like I'm as close to acting. I'm not an actor because I've watched you on the Wonder Years or something. As like I'm a user. I look at you, I watch you do your thing, but I feel like honestly, that 5 years of my life was like such a waste.
Really?
It really was, because I could have been focused on something related to music, and nothing to speak of at all comes into play in doing my job. I mean, I can look at these microphone preamps sitting next to me and I understand how they work, but it doesn't help me use them any better. It's
Really?
like you set the volume and you set the compressor ratio and all these things that I don't have to know how it's working. Just like when I'm playing a game on a computer, I don't have to know what language it was programmed in. I don't care, So there's, regrets are a painful thing, but I really regret, to me, those 5 years of my life, and they were really pretty dark. I felt like I lost myself.
Ah,
Yeah.
well, that's an interesting thing. I mean, do you think there's anything to draw from? Were you active musically, or were you just whilst doing that, or do you feel like it kind of cut off the umbilical cord to your connection to music because you suddenly had to go into maybe more of an analytical part of your mind? Like it sounds to me like maybe it kind of cut off your oxygen or your circulation for what was really bringing you a joyous experience.
So I still certainly listen to music and play guitar and things. I wasn't active like performing or anything during those years, but I was in such a depressed state for like the last 2 or 3 years of it that I didn't want to do much of anything.
Okay.
I mean, it was bad. I'm surprised I kind of got through and got my degree in the end.
And then he discovered the Backstreet Boys.
That's right, and
his life
then it all
changed.
turned around. That's right.
I was wondering about that tattoo he has, the Backstreet Boys. And
Yeah.
It's right next to Menudo and New Kids on the Block.
It says I want it that way on my left shoulder.
But no, seriously, I want to say, because we're talking about music, artistry, production, and you're talking about a dark state.
Right.
I've written music before that is kind of gloomy. I've written music that's very happy. I think when you mentioned something about, I was so happy when this happened, or I was so depressed when that happened, and I'm sure a lot of listeners feel like they wasted their time at it, pursuing a study, or maybe at a job they had, or maybe they were in this band. Oh, if I would have been in that band, etc. So I think people can relate to what you're saying. But I don't think it was a waste for you, in the sense that if that's become a part of you and it's helped you artistically, and I'll bet it has, and you probably don't even realize it has. Let's say a person comes in and wants you to produce an album, and the album is about the 5 years they wasted. You'll go, brother, let's, you know what I mean?
Well,
I'm always looking for the silver lining. So.
I can definitely relate to someone who feels like, geez, why did I just spend a year in that relationship or something?
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's a romantic thing or something.
Yeah, and again, I think as an artist and as somebody who, Dan's heard me say this a million times. That's our job as an artist, is to, be out there and, we listen to the propaganda, we take in what's going on politically, what's going on, in pop culture and just the general temperament of our society. And then we regurgitate it out and we create our art with our own fine-tuned voice, and vessel. And so the more experience, good and bad, melancholic, dark, complete elated joy, the more of that we have to hold on to, we can ultimately put into our work, whether it's on a subconscious level or a conscious level.
Right.
But having said that, 5 years is a long time to do anything you don't want to do. It's almost like a prison sentence. If there's certain things, if people told me if I had to do it for 5 years, I'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just wanted to sort of change gears to speak to you about something that seems to be really important to you in recording, which I so appreciate, which is you build tracks very much around the vocal.
Correct.
Yeah, it's important to you when you're producing something that the vocal is in the foreground. It's right there and it's present, and that nothing else really over complicates what's going on with the vocal. I mean, I don't know sometimes if you start with a vocal and then build a track around it? If you build a track, do you prefer one or the other? Do people come to you and say, this is the song? There's one song in particular that you sent to me that with a female voice, and I think you sent it to me because you thought that it reminded us both of a sort of 07.
Right. So that was the title track to my band's second album, Porcelain. So
Yes.
that was Christina. So since she has such an amazing voice, even if she didn't, I would still make the vocal the center. So I'll say a couple things. First of all, it's like my philosophy is, how do I support the lyric? Like, what is the person saying, and how do we support that musically?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a happy song, let's make a happy arrangement. Sad song, let's not, right? In simple, I'm oversimplifying, right? And then what instruments, what tempo, what chords all support that. So with her, she wrote that melody off of a chord progression our other guitar player had, and that was the original version of the tune, which was just like with a drum machine looping to kind of lock us into a tempo, and he had this chord progression, and she very effortlessly just writes. Things just come to her. Sometimes it's la, 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 and then the words, a little phrase, and it'll have a lot to do with what is going on in her life at that point. And it's
Right.
remarkable to see how quickly she does it, because for me, when I used to write songs, it was just plodding. It was like engineering school. Like,
Yes.
oh God, when is this going to be over? It was like great when I started, and then I like got bogged down, and then when it was done, I was like,
Yeah.
thank God that's over, and then I was happy
Yes.
again, right? So it was like 10% on either end was fun, and 80% was not. So I always keep the vocal clear, because that's what the song is about. That's what most people hear. No one's listening to how I EQ'd the snare drum, or what reverb I put on the fiddle. You know, it's
Yes.
Is it a catchy song? Is the melody strong? I'll work with singers, especially if the vocal line isn't working. If it's just too boring or static or something, that the song isn't going to work. I don't want to polish that turd. It's like the song has to be a song that exists, just like with a vocal and piano or vocal and guitar. And if it works like that, then we can go. And if it doesn't, let's restructure the song. Let's rework the song. I look at it like a foundation. If you got cracks in the foundation, let's not build a house on that.
Do you think that you're now speaking about arranging, and how? I mean, do you like to arrange? Do you sometimes have artists who come into you and they're like, okay, they'll play the song and bridge, chorus, verse, yada yada yada, and maybe a little interlude here, and maybe I want to, guitar solo here. Are you good at that? Is that something that you enjoy? Do you feel like you can kind of turn a song around that isn't maybe necessarily working, but it has all the right components which you hear in your mind?
Yes, but it's gotta be good, as I say, just with the vocal and one instrument. We've got to get it to that point. So I have no problem sending people home and saying, you need to rewrite this chorus. And if they want my help doing that, that's fine, and I don't care. I'm not looking for co-writing credit. But I do have a client who I gave her so much input, she ended up giving me co-writing credit on the song. I'm like, you don't have to do that, but whatever, that's fine. I'm not going to object either. And but the song in the end, it was this nice, pleasant tune. But I said, there's nothing to make me care about. It was like it was sort of like, hey, remember when music on the radio was good? And what we ended up doing was turning it around to saying, I listen to music from the past and it reminds me of you and how you went off to war and never came home. Hey, now I care about this woman. I don't care about, now music sucks. Remember in the 70s when it was good? But it was sort of like, oh, this song reminds me of you. And I remember when your mother came and called me and told me that you weren't coming home. And, and it was a much more interesting song for me as a listener emotionally. And that was, So it's about, let's make the song powerful. Let's make it matter to someone, whether that's sad or happy or angry, but don't leave me not caring. If I am just kind of like, that was fine. Don't just give me words and chords and a melody. Make me care. And you know that as an actor, right? It's like, to be or not to be, that's the question.
Yeah, no.
Oh, whether it's noble or like, you're not going to deliver that solo. You got to be. It's how you do it.
Yeah,
How
well,
you,
it's the story behind the story.
right.
You know, even with acting, and I think it applies to music too, and life, where how much of what we say in our life is really what we're thinking, and that's what they teach you in acting. And again, it's applicable to music. Um, you know, if you take Leonard Cohen, for example, you know, and you go into his deep-rooted narrative voice and the lyrics that come forth when he's singing or speaking it, you always get a sense that he's come from a place to bring you to that place. So his inner monologue is so distinctively sound and stable that it's just there. It's not even, it doesn't need to be explained. And then you have what he's singing about. But the inner monologue is almost like it feeds the narrative voice. And so in life, if I'm meeting somebody for the first time, you know, I may be keeping up appearances, so to speak, or I'm having a kind of courteous bedside manner, but I'm just making a point of it's interesting in life how often what we say is not necessarily what we feel. That's just how human beings are, and until we get to a point where we're comfortable enough to really say what we feel. It's why it's so interesting in movies where you have somebody. Like in the Wonder Years, you had Fred Savage and you had the Daniel Stern voice. That was the hook that reeled people in because he was a kid, but he was like a 40-year-old mensch.
Right.
And so he's saying one thing, and then this voice comes and says, and then I was thinking to myself, what the hell was this guy saying? You know what I'm saying?
Right,
So
right.
that's how we work. And it sounds to me like that's kind of what you're saying when you work with artists is, you know, what can you bring to this that reels me in, that's visceral, that's palpable, that I can immediately identify with, and that's the connective tissue to being a human being. It's like, where's the humanity in this? Where's the three-dimensional?
Right.
And is it synced up with your inner monologue? You know,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
And one of the toughest projects I've done in the last couple of years was a collection of songs by a woman, and I didn't care about any of the songs emotionally. I could not connect. I would listen to her demos, and then I would immediately forget them, and like, how come I can't remember what the song? I'd have to go listen to it. Oh yeah, but it was like hearing it for the first time, and I said, what is going? And I remember standing in the shower, and it hit me. I'm like, oh, because I don't care. She didn't make me care, and I had a difficult conversation with her where I had to say that, I'm like, you got to make me care, and it's reflective of her personality. She puts on this brave front, but there's a wall. There's a wall that's up. It's like, if you're a songwriter, you better show me your soul, you know. And that's a difficult, vulnerable thing for singer-songwriters to do, because not every song is like, yeah, I'm on top of the world, I'm kick ass. You know, it's not like a big pop power ballad from the 80s, you know, of like, you know, about rock and roll and, you know, whatever. Like a Motley Crue song is not going to be that, but I don't think she's capable of that. And I said, I really would like you to rework these tunes. And she talked to her friends or whatever and said, no, we're just going to do it as is. And we built the tunes, and the production was fine. But at the end of the day, I still don't care about the songs. I know I don't want to go listen to them like, wow, we brought in some great guitar players and, you know, a fiddler and a drummer, but does it speak to the listener? I don't think so.
It sounds like she has the desire but not the talent.
Well, she has some talent. I think it's
Some
a much
talent,
deeper level that she isn't going to let herself be vulnerable.
So she has the potential, she just won't go there. She
is so, I've got my stuff together, and I'm this and I'm that. And that's some of the worst clients to work with. The people who are insecure and fearful, I'm like, I will nurture you. I will take care of you. I am on your side. I'm your coach. I'm your buddy. I'm your producer. I am here for you. Just, you know, you're safe here. But if someone comes in with the opposite, like, check me out, check out how great I am, I'm like, okay, you better prove it to me. And
how serious are you about that in terms of people that you work with? Do you give them kind of a chance and say, go home, rework it, let's see if I care when you come back? And if they don't, do you are you at that stage? I mean, are you one of those kind of artists where you feel like, wow, you know what, if I'm not gung ho about this, it's kind of a waste of my time? Or do you, I mean, how does that how how does that hit you?
Right.
Do you ever turn anybody away based on their, in your personal opinion, their inabilities to sort of come through and make it interesting for you to, and enough for you to record?
I don't have to, in the end, really care about the song. That's why I did this whole album with her.
Mm-hmm.
And I would certainly prefer it if she had reworked the tunes. I turn people away if I think the talent isn't there. I don't.
Okay.
I don't accept clients until they send me something they have done.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't tell you how many people have come in who can't tune their guitar, who cannot sing, who don't even know how to write a song. They don't even understand song structure. They'll come to me and they'll have like some lyrics on a page. I'm like, this isn't even in a verse chorus form. You don't understand what a bridge does. It's like, no, go take some songwriting classes. And on the worst case scenario, some people think I'm gonna make them a star. Like they can come to me, they don't even know how to sing or really write, and I'm supposed to put an album out and get them signed to Sony for $5 million, and they're gonna be the next Justin Bieber. It's like, no, that's no.
I'm glad you're the one dealing with those kind of people and not me. I'm surprised to hear people like that exist, because I wouldn't step into a recording studio if I was wasting everybody's time. I can understand everybody has a bit of a blind spot, like you might think you sing really great and you hear back and you're not that great.
Yeah.
But if somebody like has nothing going, why are they wandering into a recording studio?
Yeah, and if they want to pay me $48 an hour to teach them how to write, I'm happy to do that. Trust me. I would love to do that, but I'm always looking at the fact that 2 hours here is almost $100. People, you can't be wasting
They want
time.
you to sprinkle magic fairy dust on their
Yeah.
stuff and, like you said, polish the turd and go, all right, well, you have no talent and you're terrible, but, I'll make it sound great. And that's just self-delusional to me.
And in preparing, Dan and I have been talking about his next project, and I know he's going to come in. He's already prepared. We've already talked about at length of songs are written, songs are arranged somewhat in his head, and we're talking specific people who may contribute to it and all that. And it'll be great. It'll be a good experience. And I've done work with Dan in the past, so I know what that's about.
And I didn't know about this whole obligation on me to make Robert care. So I
It's
guess
not an obligation.
He,
It's just
he
a
must
request.
have cared in the past, because he never said anything. That's my new hashtag. Hashtag make Robert care.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, and I have no question in my mind that Dan will be 150% prepared. He's masterful at that, and it's so nice in my collaborative, situation with him that I mean he's really quite amazing in that regard. So Robert, I'm really interested in just asking you what's next for you. What is it that to you that still really intrigues you about music that you want to accomplish, let's say over the next decade? What's next? What do you still have to prove to yourself in terms of just stimulating your creative musical juices?
No, I'm done. I've already accomplished
It's done?
everything. Yeah, I'm perfect. And
On this podcast, Robert will be announcing his retirement from music.
yeah, this is the last time I'll ever be discussing it. No, right now, on the short term, I'm investing in new gear, and I'm obsessed with room acoustics. So I've got my tracking room sounding quite good. I'm working on my control room, and I ordered a piece of gear that's coming in, and so but in the longer term, the reason I'm doing that is to just continue to improve the quality of what I'm doing. When I hear my mixes against commercial stuff, I want to feel like I'm there, and I sometimes, very rarely, I feel like I'm there, and those are great moments. But sometimes I struggle with a mix and go, what's not working? Why is this? And I'm realizing a lot of it actually is my room. There's a problem in my mixing room. So so that's, the short term is new gear, room acoustics. Long term is just always wanting to be better and be able to make the best music that I can make.
Do you find that there's a correlation artistically in terms of what you do that aligns with where you are in your life? And does that feed you?
Yes. I'm at a really good point in my life. And so just like if you're in the middle of a traffic accident, you're not thinking about anything but that. If you clear out the other detritus of your life and I've got a great relationship with my girlfriend, and things are, financially, I don't really have to worry about stuff. And so I get to focus on what I love to do. And so it's like that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Remember that from psychology? The basic
Sure.
things of food and shelter and all that stuff, and making sure that your phone is on vibrate. Right? You get all that stuff cleared out, and then there's that top point of self-actualization, where you're doing what you feel you're put on this earth to do.
Did you say detritus?
Detritus
I've never heard that word. Oh, I've never heard it. What does it mean?
means sort of unwanted garbage, right? Things that are in the way, and flotsam and jetsam.
Yes, and I need to make the point to the listeners that this will not be the last time you hear from Robert. Robert will be possibly as much of a fixture as Tom has been. We're still going to record with Tom, and we're going to record with Robert and Ken and maybe Peter Anthony Holder. I don't know. The podcasting is an ongoing adventure, but we have to learn words like, detritus. And
Yes.
I really think the key to Robert's future would be to get a doctorate in electrical engineering.
Yes.
Go back to school for maybe 4 more years studying that in a dark room with no windows and no lights.
And lots of Prozac.
Yes. Well, this has been a lot of fun today, and we've recorded here a couple times. Robert has been the silent engineer, and this seemed like an opportunity to have him come on and participate. Because this is a situation where we're recording on Thursday, a show that's going to air tomorrow, I want to take the opportunity to be timely and mention on my other show, I've had a pretty cool back-to-back little punch. Yesterday, I released an episode featuring an interview with Lou Gramm, the voice of Foreigner, and my prior episode was with Alan Holdsworth, one of the greatest guitarists in history. So our outgoing music is going to be an acknowledgement of both of those facts. We're going to hear a vocal by Lou. We're going to hear some guitar by Alan. And I have to credit Olivia for the introduction to Lou Gramm, in a sense. I met Lou through Robin, and I met Robin, Lou's wife, through Olivia. So should include you in the thank yous when I recorded that.
Well, that would be nice.
Well, I'm doing it now on this show. That would be. We love that little. That would be very nice.
Yeah, don't leave anybody out.
And I think here's a little capper for all this. We talk about Robert's New England connection, and you've been wearing a Patriots cap for this whole thing. So,
Go Pats!
Toe, I have an excuse. Yeah, I broke my pinky toe. I dropped my phone on it. Silly.
man,
I'm so terribly disappointed in myself.
left or right foot.
Left.
So you dropped your phone on your pinky toe on your left foot.
Directly, like right on it.
And what a trooper you are. You've done this entire interview in agonizing pain from a broken toe, but you still focused on what we're doing here. So we need to learn a word for that. What would be a good word to summarize that for our good and bad word?
Trooper?
And you said you're a hippie, so you're like a starship trooper. How about that?
That works.
She's the Starship Trooper.
That's it.
I'm just a starship. As opposed to a starfish that just lays there. But an octopus doesn't. An octopus likes to, wrap themselves around you with the legs and the limbs and stuff.
Friggin' octopus. I hate those bastards.
Hey, octopus, how you doing?
I'm swimming here.
I don't know if that was Boston or Manhattan or what that was.
It was whatever we wanted it
No
to
idea.
be.
It's whatever. You just never
Okay.
know what to think
All right.
about.
Well, the next time the three of us do a show together, we'll all talk like this.
Yeah,
all
like
right.
coffee face
Yeah.
first.
Robert, you old bastard. What are you up to?
Love, is that so wrong?
Suddenly, we're all like 65 years old. And we all have
smoking 4 packs a day so I can talk like this.
we have a cigarette in one hand, a cigarette and a Guinness at the pub.
We'll bring John Rivers back from the dead.
Oh, darling.
Oh, God.
We'll talk.
Somebody has to step up and cut this off, and that's going to be me. So once again, we thank Robert for his work on the show and for being our guest and for his future contributions, because we're keeping this guy around. He's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're very lucky and privileged to have you, Robert, and you were an excellent guest. And
Oh, thank you.
you've taken me completely away from my broken toe because I was so enthralled and compelled
Wow.
by interviewing you.
By my vocabularic detritus.
Enthralled and whatever else she said. The words fly these days. We've become like a very illiterate, self-conscious, word-oriented. Well, a podcast, of course, is word-oriented.
We're wordsmiths.
Luckily, we don't have to spell anything. Nobody knows how we spell the words we use on here. So if you say favorite color, you have 2 opportunities for the silent U. Maybe I
And
should.
we're not talking about a sleeping sheep.
Silent U. Okay, very nice.
I
Ba-doom.
did not get that joke. I was not on that.
See,
Okay.
I got a singer in there.
It was
She's
a
wicked
joke.
smart.
No, it was a joke grenade. She threw it out there. I said a silent U. She said a sleeping sheep. There was a pause.
Right.
We all got it. Lovely.
Okay.
Lovely.
Anyway, we hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you next week. And thanks for listening.
And send, gifts, cards, flowers, and money for Olivia's broken toe, so she'll have something else to focus on besides the crippling, agonizing pain. But yes, so let's do this. Let's listen to some Foreigner, some Alan Holdsworth, which are episodes 108 and 109 of the Friends of Dan Music podcast, by the way. And thanks everybody for listening. Have a good weekend. Don't drop a phone on your toe, and see you next Friday.
Bye-bye.
God bless.